everyone, and today we are here to talk about some of the more recent moves that the Minnesota Vikings are making. And let's start with the latest one since I've been on YouTube, which is Tom Compton signing with Minnesota. Now, I view him as the Searles replacement because he can play both guard and tackle, just not at a starter level. But the thing is, this one fits better with the scheme because you could kind of tell Searles wasn't necessarily what they wanted because they want to go more towards the zone blocking scheme than they did the power, where Searles would be more in line with the power thing because he does not move very well. I think we can agree with that, especially like even considering that he's an offensive lineman, he does not move horizontal very well. So now you added a guy who has done this. He's athletic. He can do all that. He's more of a backup swing kind of guy. He's played on the left side and the right side. He's kind of been more of this journeyman type, and he was always asked to play several spots. So enter Tom Compton. And today was kind of a rough day, I think, for the Vikings O-line in general because you did technically lose Searles, although I think that one's not as much because you do have Tom Compton now. But Joe Berger retiring leaves a massive hole in the line at right guard. And I would expect them to draft a guy very, very high. And I would expect that to be at least round 2 if they don't go round 1. And if they don't go round 1, I would expect them, the only really reason to be going not in the first round for a guard at this point or a tackle, depending how they view Remmers, is a trade down into the second round because they think they can get a guard in the second round and get some more picks. So that's the only way I see them not taking a guard in the first round right now. And so we're not going to go over guys there because I feel like the guy that they wanted to get there was Tom Compton, maybe, because that's a reliable backup. Kai Forbath, he re-signed, so no kicker worries because I feel like he's been relatively solid for us outside of the extra points. They did sign a long snapper in a trio of moves that involved re-signing Kai Forbath, bringing back Josiah Price for another training camp, and then a long snapper. Now, the long snapper one's a little weird because some people would think, like, well, we have Kevin McDermott. And I think that's because he had, like, a separated shoulder thing, and he was in a sling at the end of last year. So I think this is more of just a camp body to make sure that there's no lingering effects of this. And obviously, if there is, they might just go with Nick Dooley. So there is a chance of that, but I think it's mostly just because it's more of a precautionary thing. And then, as I mentioned, Josiah Price, he got signed back to return for another preseason/training camp. And I wouldn't say he can't make the roster because I really think Blake Bell's probably cut next year. So if they don't address this position in the draft, or sign a guy as of right now, I want to put it past them to actually beat out Blake Bell's spot if they want to go with those tight ends. And I know Philly last year, I know DeFilippo wasn't calling the plays, but he was still part of that offense. And in the red zone, they like to use 3-4 tight ends at times. So Josiah Price wouldn't shock me of being in there. Jarius Wright was actually cut, moving on here, and to make room for Sheldon Richardson, and he ends up signing with the Carolina Panthers on a 3-year deal, reuniting with Norv Turner. So I went ahead and wrote down some of the 5 remaining receiver free agents that intrigued me personally. And so although I don't think all of these guys would be expensive based on the market right now and where we're at, Jeremy Maclin, probably the most expensive of the list. He's also the top one for me right now. He's more of a speed threat, and he gives you another kind of threat for Kirk Cousins. And I feel like that could be a very good move. And then you have Eric Decker, who he's a little old and he's probably losing a few steps. But I feel he would be a lot more effective than Treadwell, and he's the same type of receiver as Treadwell. So if they keep trying to use Treadwell, why not get a better version of him instead? And then once again, you give another weapon to Kirk Cousins. Kendall Wright, mainly a slot receiver for the most part, but he was a former first-round pick. He has the talent. He has some lingering injury problems in the past. Nothing that really was major, but he would just be kept out for a couple games here and there. So, but he's on the list just because I feel like he's one of the more talented ones out there right now, and it's a guy that you can actually kind of use as opposed to, right now, who are we rolling with like at receiver? Treadwell, Coley, Caleb Jones, I believe, and Brandon Zalistra. I hope I'm saying that right, but he's on the roster technically, and most people haven't heard of Coley, Zalistra, or Jones. So I feel like they need to bolster this a little bit at the receiver spot, and Kendall Wright would do a nice job. Jordan Matthews, bigger slot receiver, but I think you can move people around when you have Jordan Matthews there because you have three guys who can all play the slot then and outside. And then Bryce Butler, I feel he was very underrated at his time in Dallas. And at times, I thought he was more effective than Des Bryant was last year. He's very fast and he's very big. So he's more of a height, weight, speed guy. And that would give you the legitimate deep threat down the field. And this is more of a wide receiver 3 spot, so I wouldn't be shocked to see them just address this spot through the draft. And moving over to the defensive side of this, nickel corner is still a problem, and they still lack it, and I would expect them to bring in a veteran that isn't too expensive at the spot. The first one, even though he is 40 years old, Terrence Newman. I feel like the coaching staff loves him. He knows it inside and out just because he's been with Zimmer for like ever. And Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie, another guy that I really like on this spot, assuming the price is right, which is he's a guy that can play inside and outside, kind of gives you flexibility with roads. I guess if you need to move him inside to the slot to actually follow a guy, which he did a little bit more the past 2 years than he has in the past. And you can actually move him outside and it doesn't really hurt you that much. This name might seem familiar, and that is Brashad Breeland, who some people may be thinking, well, he signed with Carolina. He failed a physical because of a foot thing. So if that foot is healed and we can get him in on a cheaper contract because of that, then he's actually a pretty good nickel corner. He was going to sign what I believe was like a 3 or 4 year deal worth $26 million. So he's a good corner. He's worth money. And if you can get him on the down low for cheap because of this injury thing, we have 3 pretty good corners. And then another guy I feel like people don't talk about is Delvin Brew. He has a very long injury history dating all the way back to high school when he actually broke his neck and he took a very long route to get to the NFL where he played in some developmental football league. He went to the Arena League. He's in the CFL. He went to the NFL with New Orleans. And then the injury bug started to bite him a little bit again. So, but he played at a very high level the last time he was actually healthy. And some people would argue that he was like a Pro Bowl corner when healthy. So, but him, you don't really need a full-time guy there if they still believe in Mackenzie Alexander. So, it's maybe not the end of the world if you get a guy who kind of has an injury history if he's mostly just shifting in and out, in and out. It's not like a full-time position to him if we have him and Alexander splitting 50-50, 60-40, whatever it may be. The last one is Marcus Sherrills, not for corner, but because they still need a returner. And I know Sherrills has kind of been always on the bubble. Like, will he make it? Will he not? If he's signed back, he's on the team. That's just how this is. And I feel like they need to sign him back because of how good he is at returning. Unless they can draft a guy who can actually return, which they tried last year in Stacey Coley and Rodney Adams. It turned out Rodney Adams couldn't feel the punt. And Stacey Coley just... I'm not so sure what happened with that one. Jerick McKinnon, they just stopped using him there because he was too vital to the offense at that point when he started to, when Dalvin Cook got hurt, you had the little tandem between him and Murray. So, but obviously McKinnon's gone. Rodney Adams, I believe, is actually a Colt right now. And so Marcus Sherrills still out there, and that nickel corner spot is actually another position I would expect them to draft fairly as high as the second or third round. And I think you're kind of looking at a just round range of 2 to 4, because I feel like they'll trade back and get a 4 somehow. That's just what Spielman does. And yeah, until I come back with some other things, I'll see you then. Farewell.